everyone. Welcome to the May 21st meeting of the Columbia Rotary Club. Glad to have such a big crowd here today. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our national anthem with Rusty DePass and Jim Smithwick. And now past President Michael Kahn will come up and lead us in our invocation.
Let us pray. God, our parent, protector, and provider, we give you thanks for the day, for this time together, indeed for abundant life. We give you thanks for our speaker, Alan, and for all that the Wilson family has meant to South Carolina, for their example of service to others above the desires of self. And we give you thanks and ask your blessing upon this delicious food, so well prepared and well served. And we ask that its nourishment undergird our efforts to reach out in loving kindness to others. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Michael. All right, I hope everybody had a good weekend. And if you will, please hold up your cart buckets. Give generously. I think there were a few people, before we get to visiting Rotarians and guests, I think there were a few people in the room here that saw, did anybody see Book of Mormon this weekend? Or this week? Yeah, there was a lot. That was fantastic, wasn't it? Good stuff. All right, Amanda, you want to come on up? I don't think I've laughed that hard in a really long time, and I need to see it again because I missed everything from laughing so hard. So we're going to ask Amanda Strickland to come up, and she'll introduce visiting Rotarians and guests. And if somebody can come and do the microphone.
Hello, welcome. I'm Amanda Strickland. I'm with Hill Construction. We do not have any visiting Rotarians today, but I know we have a lot of guests. So if you would pass the mic around, we welcome all our guests, and thank you for joining us at Rotary today.
Hello, I'm Karen Blackman, and today I'm thrilled to have Amanda Cleary and Greg Jansen from T. Floyd.
I'm Leo Richardson. I have with me today Reverend Jesse Blatton, who has been putting in a lot of work the last 7-8 years in School District 1 and heading one of our memory programs. I know the superintendent is delighted, so we have with him as our guest today, Reverend Jesse Blatton.
Anderson Bass from Joseph A. Clothers off of Forest Drive. Today with me, I got a good friend of mine, Tyler Surratt. He's been in management in the food industry here in Columbia for the better part of a decade, and a great guy to get to know, and glad you're with me today.
Is that everyone? Well, welcome.
Hello,
I'm Milton Moore, and I have with my guest, as my guest today, first John Barnes with Pendleton Street Advisors. John, if you'd stand up. Business Advisors. Also have Josh R., please stand. Marie Autry. Brenda Johnson. And Alan Wilson. They're with the Employer HR Group. He's with the Attorney General's Office in Charlotte.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Have a great day.
All right, welcome. We're glad to have you all here. We have a pretty packed program today, so we're going to go ahead and get started with that. And to kick things off, I'm going to ask our good friend Kay Shaw to come up, and we're gonna have a nice scholarship presentation and meet some wonderful individuals from Richland One.
Thank you, President Carey. This year, our Columbia Rotary Club was able to provide 2 young people in the Richland One School District with $20,000 scholarships. These scholarship funds are paid directly to the college on a semester basis as long as the student maintains a B average or a 3.0 GPA. In addition, we added this year several requirements that will keep our winners more connected and involved with Rotary. So as we go through the year, hopefully you'll see our young winners come back and spend some time with us on projects and just in meetings. Members of this year's scholarship committee, and I will ask these folks to stand, are Louisa Campbell, Bob Diggle, Maritha Harris, Catherine Kennedy, Dr. Leo Richardson, and myself. And please thank these folks for their hard work. Members of this year's scholarship committee had the daunting task of choosing 2 winners from 20 very smart, very deserving, very talented young people who came from all 7 of the high schools in Richland One, as well as Hammond, Ben Lippen, Heathwood Hall, and the South Carolina Association of Independent Homeschools. Today I'm very proud to recognize Nicholas Courtwright from AC Flora High. He's going to be introduced by Flora's International Baccalaureate Coordinator, Alina Davis. Nicholas's mother, Carmen Courtwright, is here with us today as well. Kennedy, give Nicholas a hand. And Kennedy, you will stand very quickly and you'll hear from these folks later. Kennedy Fee is a very impressive young lady from Dreer High School. Kennedy's parents are Calvin and Ashley Fee, and they're both with us today. Kennedy's counselor is Kevin Kirkley, and you will hear from him in just a little while. Nicholas and Kennedy are going to be introduced by their teacher or counselor, and then they're going to share their career goals with us. I'm going to turn the podium over to Alina Davis and then to Kevin Kirkley, who will introduce their students, and then closing out our presentation today will be Dr. Craig Witherspoon, who is a member of our club and superintendent of Richland School District 1. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is my great honor and pleasure to introduce Nicholas Courtwright of AC Flora High School. Nicholas is at the top of his class, has earned numerous honors and awards in his 4 years of high school, and is a candidate for the International Baccalaureate Diploma. All of this is listed on his resume, so I would like to focus on the things that are not listed there. While researching the objectives of the Rotary Club, I was struck by how Nicholas embodies the characteristics of a true Rotarian scholar. I have observed Nicholas for the past 3 years in the classroom and beyond, as he has embraced and adopted the qualities of a global citizen. Nicholas has an open mind, is well-informed, aware and empathetic, consistently concerned and caring for others. He encourages a sense of community with all of his peers and is strongly committed to engagement and action to make the world a better place. I have seen Nicholas interacting and communicating effectively with people from all walks of life while having a sense of collective responsibility for all who inhabit the globe. Additionally, Nicholas's embodiment of a true global citizen is quite evident in the two words that come to mind when I think of Nicholas: dilettante linguist. Nicholas has an insatiable thirst for knowledge that extends beyond the classroom walls. While he's a fluent speaker of Spanish and has been extremely successful in his Ivy Spanish course over the past 2 years, he's also the self-taught speaker of quite a few languages. He's the ideal person to promote the advancement of international understanding, goodwill, and peace. That may be familiar to you because it's the fourth objective of the Rotary Club. The future certainly looks bright for Nicholas, and I look forward to seeing all that he will accomplish in college and beyond as a scientist and a global citizen. I am also certain that he will represent the Rotary Club well, and he will make us all very proud. Thank you. Nicholas Courtwright, everyone.
I really don't know if I'd say I'm fluent in Spanish, but thank you. I really just don't know what to say other than thank you so much for this opportunity to be here and for this scholarship. I really cannot express how much it means to me to just be here and be able to participate. So, I plan to go to the University of South Carolina Honors College for major in molecular biology. And with that, I really haven't decided whether or not I'm going to pursue an MD or go into research, but maybe here I can get some more opinions on what I should do or what I can do, and maybe see what the best path is for me.
Next, we will have Mr. Kevin Kirkley from Dreher High School.
Good afternoon. I am very fortunate to have the honor of introducing Kennedy Fee, who is our student from Dreher High School. We're certainly grateful to the Rotary Club for its support not only of Kennedy but of Dreher throughout the years that we've been involved with you all. Kennedy, it goes without saying, is one of our most outstanding students at Dreher. Certainly academically, she is one of the strongest students we have. She ranks in the top 20 in the class. She has taken our most advanced coursework all throughout high school. She's a member of our AP Capstone program, which means that she's taken the most demanding AP courses, and that she's also completed a senior thesis that I'll tell you a little bit more about in just a second, in which she's done a research topic all on her own that she's carried out, designed, and written up. Outside the classroom, though, I think that Kennedy would probably agree that her biggest area of interest has been band. And if you have ever had a student who's involved with band, you know what a commitment of time and energy that is. Kennedy's been our drum major, and so she's really shown leadership of our band and put in the time through rehearsals and after-school activities. Dreher's band has achieved at tremendously high levels this year with Kennedy at the helm. I had to make sure that I got this right from Kennedy. Our marching band this year ranked 4th in the lower state and was 9th overall in the state. So really for Dreher, this has been a huge achievement for us, and something that Kennedy has been very instrumental in helping us build. In our concert band, we were ranked this year superior with distinction, which is also a tremendous honor for a high school band. Kennedy has academic interests that lie in a lot of different areas. Her most interesting courses in high school, outside of band of course, have been biology, but she's also interested in U.S. history. She's enjoyed her AP literature course. And as I mentioned, this year she's done an academic thesis project in which she's been able to combine her interests. And she did a project this year in which she studied the effects of music on both heart rate and the psychological response of individuals, and compared people who were musicians and had previous exposure to music with people who were just lay people with music, to see if there was a difference in their physiological responses to different types of music. So you can really sort of see how she's been able to combine her academic and her artistic interests into a project. Outside the classroom, Kennedy's been involved in organizations at school such as National Honor Society. She's a Richland I High School Scholar. She's participated in community service. She was very involved in flood relief when that happened several years ago. But most of all, Kennedy's just well regarded by her teachers and everybody at Dreher. She's thought of as a student who's poised and is a good representation of our school, and I feel certain that she will represent the Rotary Club well as well. Kennedy is a true leader. You know, being the drum major for band requires her to be able to work with a variety of different personalities, and she does that well. So, without further ado, I will let Kennedy tell you a little bit more about her plans for the future. And again, we're very grateful to all of you at Rotary.
Good afternoon, my name is Kennedy Fee, and today with me I have my mom and dad, Ashley and Calvin Fee. And before I start talking about myself, first I'd like to thank all of you guys for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for choosing me as one of the recipients for the scholarship. And just thank you so much for all of this is great. So in the fall I'll be attending Clemson University for a nursing major. I'm not exactly sure what exactly I want to do with it. I'm considering maybe becoming a nurse practitioner or maybe becoming an anesthesiologist, but I know that with all the time and knowledge that I'll be getting in Clemson University that I'll find whatever I feel like I want to do, whether it's the anesthesiology or neurology, cardio, any of that. I know I'll find it at some point. Also, as you heard, I am a huge band person, so that's never going to be let go. So at Clemson, I'll be joining concert band, jazz band, something like that, so I can always pursue my love of music. And also, I feel that college just gives me an opportunity to really use my resources. So I'll also be, whether not just academics or band, I'll be able to do any other interests that I have, such as photography. I love photography, and I know that Clemson will offer me ways to really get what I need with that. So those are my plans, I think.
Good afternoon. Certainly a great representation of students that we have in Richmond I. I certainly want to, again, congratulate this year's honorees, and I would like their parents to please stand. I know they're the proudest folks in this room. Producing such outstanding young people, and to the scholarship committee, you guys had your hands full this year with the talented young people that we have, certainly in Richmond I. And I too want to thank the Columbia Rotary for this support and enabling students to go on and move into that next phase of life and the great possibilities and opportunities that exist. Wonderful, wonderful time of year. We're getting into graduations and all of those things, and these scholarships certainly feed into that. So congratulations to Nicholas and Kennedy, and we will continue to have great students to come forward from Richmond I. Thank you.
We're so delighted to have you guys here today, and I have to say, when I was your age, I didn't have a resume, and I didn't know how to speak like that either. Both of you are so well spoken. So I think our future is in very good hands, and we're very proud to honor you with those scholarships, and to the parents. You know, I know that's exciting. Congratulations, job well done. All right. I'm going to ask Jeff Lawler to come up here and lead us in health and happiness, but real quick, if you drive a Mercedes, I have your keys. You're going to need these. Yeah, so they'll be up here when you need them. So come on up, Jeff.
Thanks, President Carey. Okay, so we're going to start with health and happiness today. We've got a little bit of news. Most of you said no news, and that was good news. But we've got a little news to share with you. The Salvation Army is having their open house at the Corps this evening from 5:30 to 7:30, located at 3024 Fair Road in Columbia. And they invite everyone in the community to join, and especially, of course, all of you here in Rotary. Please join them this evening for their open house at the Corps. On another note, this kind of touched me when I was passed this information, and some sad news, but Bill Clowney, former past president, his daughter Candy has cancer and it has spread, and they really need a miracle at this point. I knew Bill and his wife Mary through the College of Charleston, and they were always the nicest people. I had no idea he was a Rotarian, and of course a president, which you can totally see. But that really touched me, and that's very heartfelt. So there, please ask him for all of your prayers. And also, I have his email address if y'all would like to send some news to him. Please let me know after the meeting. I'll be sure to share it with you. Moving right along. So Memorial Day is coming up, and we don't have a meeting, so I figured I would focus on Memorial Day. And just kind of wanted to give you a brief history and run through some things and tell a corny joke or two, and then so I'll get started. Memorial Day typically signals the start of the summer holidays. Our sense that Memorial Day is a day for play was fostered in 1971 when Congress passed a law, the National Holiday Act of 1971, to schedule 4 national holidays on Mondays to give federal workers a 3-day holiday weekend. Originally called Decoration Day, it was an occasion for people to visit cemeteries and decorate the graves of those who had fought and died for the North in the Civil War. The first state to officially recognize the holiday was New York in 1873. By 1890, it was recognized by all of the northern states. The holiday was not acknowledged by the South until after World War I, when its focus expanded to honor Americans who died fighting in any war. Since the late 1950s, on the Thursday before Memorial Day, soldiers of the 3rd U.S. Infantry placed small American flags at each of more than the 260,000 gravestones at Arlington National Cemetery. They then patrolled 24 hours a day during that weekend to ensure that each flag remained standing. To help re-educate and remind Americans of the true meaning of Memorial Day, the National Monument of Remembrance, or the National Moment of Remembrance, resolution was passed in December of 2000. It asked that at 3 p.m., all Americans voluntarily and informally observe in their own way a moment of remembrance and respect, pausing from whatever they are doing for a moment of silence or listening to taps. While you're enjoying all the food, sun, and fun, don't forget to pay homage to all the brave men and women who fought for our freedom so we can be together with our family, safe and sound. We shall always be forever grateful. Okay, so we've got some interesting facts here, and I think we've got a couple more minutes. Broken shackles lie at the feet of the Statue of Liberty, signifying freedom from oppression and tyranny. The Declaration of Independence was written 3 times, the first 2 of which were on hemp paper, not parchment. The Liberty Bell was last rung on George Washington's birthday in 1846. The U.S. flag colors are Old Glory red, white, and Old Glory blue. The current 50-star American flag was designed by a 17-year-old as a school project in 1958. He got a B-. So we've all heard the term tax-paying dollars at work. Forgive us for those who are in government. The government is still paying a pension on behalf of a Civil War veteran to his 85-year-old granddaughter. Although Ohio is listed as the 17th state in the U.S., it is technically 47th because Congress forgot to vote on a resolution to admit to the Union until 1953. All right, I need my flag. Thanks, sir. All right, so here's the joke. What did one flag say to the other flag? Nothing, they just waved. So, taking it to a more personal note, what does Memorial Day mean to me? My father was a Marine. He served 67 to 72. He loved Full Metal Jacket. He said that's exactly what it was like, but they called you maggots. He said it was just an amazing experience that kind of built him into the man that he is today, and of course, I'd like to follow suit. I never served in the military, but I have high respect for all of the men and women of the armed forces. I believe in our nation and what freedom represents, and Memorial Day is about people. It's about the ultimate sacrifice that most veterans did not have to pay, but many did. So I ask you, what does Memorial Day mean to you? And my call to action on this is, if you know of anyone who has lost a loved one, or maybe going through a tough time during the holiday, I urge you to reach out in some form or fashion to give them comfort. Their loved one bared the burden of sacrifice and service to our nation. And as always, we understand service to others, service above self. Thank you very much.
All right, so that was Jeff's first go of health and happiness. I think he did a pretty good job on that one. I didn't have to pull out the big hook, and pull you off the stage. It's good stuff, good stuff. Those of you who are new Rotarians, we're coming for you. So Shannon Baker, if you're in the room, yeah, we're coming for you. All right, we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna ask Milton Moore to come up and introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Carrie. Speaking of history of this country, 355 years ago, in 1663, 8 lord proprietors were granted some land, and they called it South Carolina. Then people came and settled in South Carolina. 35 years later, in 1698, the first Attorney General was appointed to protect the interest of the people of South Carolina. That's how old this office is. 320-something years old. Nicholas Trott was the first Attorney General. He came from Bermuda. From there being the Attorney General, King sent him over here, and he became our first Attorney General. He presided over many cases, but one was the famous case of the famous South Carolina pirate, Steve Bonnet, or Bonnet, however they pronounce it. South Carolina Attorney General's office established the first code of laws for South Carolina, and that expanded to help the nation develop what was known as a code of laws, a bringing together, codification of all the laws. So South Carolina has played a tremendous history through the Attorney General's office in the nation's history. Our Attorney General has 3 chief functions. This is to give you an overview of how important this office is and how critical it is we have the right people in that office. The 3 primary functions. One is the criminal prosecutor for the state. State grand juries, death penalties, fraud against the state, and crimes against children and domestic violence, those sort of criminal prosecutions. The second primary function is the legal officer for the state. All the internal legal issues, engagement of attorneys that have to represent South Carolina and other issues, and the constitutional opinions and interpretations. And the third legal function of the Attorney General is the head of the Securities Department, investment securities for registration and sale of investment securities. Those are critical to our state and to any state. In the late 1800s, it was no longer an appointment position, it became an elected position. There are approximately 200 employees in the State Attorney General's office, about 90 attorneys, and there are about 8,000 active cases going on, maybe more by now. We've had in this state some excellent attorney generals, Democrats and Republicans. There have been 50 attorney generals in this state. Travis Medlock was one that I knew well, was a Democrat. Now, I don't talk very favorably about most Democrats, but I will for Travis. He was a fine Attorney General and a fine man, and you know I'm joking about that. Henry McMaster, a member of our club, was the Attorney General. Obviously, our guest today is Alan Wilson. Alan is the son of the well-known Congressman Joe Wilson. His brother Hunter Wilson just joined this club. Julian Wilson is a member of a Lexington club, I believe, and I hope Ed will be someday a Rotarian. They're all Rotarians. Ed will be there. They're a family of Eagle Scouts. That tells you a lot. They're a family whose members serve this nation in the Navy and in the Army and in the National Guard. Alan Wilson attended Francis Marion University. He attended the School of Law in South Carolina. He served in Iraq and earned the Combat Action Badge. He's through there, folks. He's a colonel in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. He's also served as Assistant Solicitor, Assistant Attorney General, and had some time in a private practice. He was elected Attorney General in 2010 in South Carolina, and at that time was the youngest Attorney General in the nation. In 2014, he was re-elected, and I guess now is the second youngest Attorney General in the nation. He'll run again in 2018. He still serves in the National Guard as a colonel in the Advocate General, Judge Advocate General. I would like to say that I've known Alan Wilson since he was a young child. There's not a finer man and a finer family that I could know of that could serve this prestigious office. It is critical that we have good people, both Democrats and Republicans, in the Attorney General's office because they are here, as they said 350 years ago, to protect the interests of South Carolina. Now he will tell you about what he's doing to protect the interests of South Carolina. Thank you, Alan.
Also, great to see our young people here. I hope when you two get out of college, you'll think about joining Rotary. It was truly one of the great pleasures of my young adulthood to be part of such a great and distinguished group of people. Before I get into my remarks, folks, one of the benefits of being Attorney General is that oftentimes people give you gifts, they give you opportunities that you would not otherwise have, but for the fact that you're in an elected office. And I cannot take advantage of this opportunity, and I can't think of a better group of people I would like to pass this on. So I'm going to tell you about an opportunity that I can't attend because of a scheduling conflict, but if you want to do this, see me after the meeting and I will forward my friend's contact information to you. He sends me an email last week saying, "Hey Alan, a good friend of mine has 2 tickets for the 2018 U.S. Open Golf Tournament in Southampton, New York this June. He paid $5,000 for each, including hotel reservations and clubhouse badges. He didn't realize last year when he bought them it was going to be starting on the same day as his wedding." Choices. So here's the opportunity. He says, if you are interested, he is looking for someone to take his place. It's at St. Christopher's Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's 5'4", about 115 pounds, good cook too. She'll be the one in the long white dress. So please see me after the meeting if you would like to take his place this June. It is great to be with you. I've had the opportunity to speak to this club a number of times. Rotary is such a big part of my life. I was one of the founding members of West Metro, although I don't get to participate as frequently as I like to. I always enjoy speaking. I've had the opportunity to speak at 2 district conferences this calendar year. In fact, Saturday morning, I woke up early, mostly because my wife kicked me at 5 a.m. to cut on the royal wedding. And then I drove myself down to North Charleston where I got to speak to, I believe it was District 7680 and 7750 joint conference. And it was interesting, as I was walking into the convention center down there, I rounded the corner to get ready to go into the big, where all the Rotarians were meeting, about 300 of them. And as I turned the corner, there were about, 8, 9, 10 very attractive women, all very tan, all very fit, wearing Speedo bikinis. And I'm thinking to myself, man, Rotary is really up their game. What I didn't realize, it was a bodybuilding and fitness competition in the next adjacent area next to the Rotary Conference. So there were a lot of breaks being taken. So people go outside and get coffee and water and things like that to stay nourished. I'm very conscious. Thank you again for having me here. The thing that I wanted to talk to this group about is something that I speak to Rotaries all over the state. When I was elected in 2010, I did not realize that some of the issues I'd be involved in would pick me. You know, you run for office thinking you're going to pick your platform, but sometimes your platform picks you. I met a young woman in 2011, late 2011, early 2012, who was a victim of human trafficking. This young woman had been trafficked in the state of Michigan back in the late 80s, early 90s when she was coming of age in high school. And I'm not going to tell you her story because it's a little bit longer and I want to get straight to the meat of it. What I can tell you is this. She was trafficked by high school seniors, boys that were in her class. And they basically, what they did is they roofied her with a drink. And while she lied unconscious, they sexually assaulted her and they took pictures of her with Polaroids and they used those as blackmail to force her into the sex trade for the next 2 years of her life. And she went home every night. She slept under her roof. She went to church with her family. She went to school. School resource officers, the teachers, her advisors, her pastor, her mom, dad, no one, she never told anybody. Eventually she escaped the lifestyle. And then of course as she grew up, got a family of her own, and then she spent her adult life committed to educating people around the country, and she addressed a room full of attorneys general on her story, and it's a very interesting story. You can read about it in a book called The Slave Across the Street by Teresa Flores, which is her name. But Teresa's story is another story for another time, but what it did is it kind of catapulted me into the movement. I don't know if I was a Johnny-come-lately, but I know that I got there when I did, and there was a law being pushed in South Carolina General Assembly that eventually got passed. Now at that time, South Carolina was one of the worst states in the country in how we enforce human trafficking laws. In fact, we didn't have any human trafficking laws on the books. We had kidnapping, we had criminal sexual conduct laws, we had other types of laws that could be used, but not human trafficking. And you know, a lot of people were involved in the process of drafting that bill. Our office played a heavy role, but we got those laws drafted, we got them passed and signed into law, and our state went from one of the worst states in the country as far as statutory schemes that can be implemented to go after human traffickers to one of the best states in the country in how we enforce human trafficking laws. You're probably thinking, well, isn't that a solution in search of a problem? I mean, human trafficking, what are we going to do with these laws? This is the kind of thing that happens in third world countries. It happens in major metropolitan areas. So I'd like to start big and drill it down to how it affects you. The human trafficking crime as a worldwide epidemic. If you look at it globally, it is a $150 billion a year industry, billion with a B. There are about 42 million victims of human trafficking, and this is about the World Health Organization. 42 million victims of human trafficking every year worldwide. It is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world. It is second behind drug trafficking. Will probably overtake drug trafficking at some point because of its profitability. You know, with drugs, you have to go back and get more drugs, but you can sell the same person over and over and over again. The United States is the #1 destination for human trafficking. I think our last year's statistics showed that 1 in 7 runaways is a victim of human trafficking, and 86% of those runaways either comes from foster care or a Department of Social Services type agency in that state. South Carolina sits between 2 of the top 20 human trafficking hubs in the country, Charlotte and Atlanta. Last year, we closed alone about 59 or 60 human trafficking cases in state court. And I say we, meaning all law enforcement and prosecution agencies around the state that were our participants in our task force. This year we have currently, as of a month and a half ago, we have over 70 cases open on the books. The top 5 counties for human trafficking, just by way of reference, and in no particular order, these are top 5: Horry, Charleston, Beaufort, Richland County, and Greenville. A lot of the human trafficking cases that we come into contact are not the kind that you would think about. When I first ran for Attorney General, I thought of human trafficking as something that happened in a Liam Neeson movie. You've all seen the movie Taken? Great movie, love the action. And I'm sure trafficking happens that way. You know, girls backpacking through Europe who are kidnapped at gunpoint and forced into the trade by some criminals, you know, organized crime syndicate. But human trafficking let's not stereotype it. Let's not stereotype victims, and let's not stereotype traffickers. Our first case, human trafficking case, was in Greenville, and it involved a couple living in an apartment complex who trafficked an undocumented Latino woman and who had a 2-year-old child that they threatened, and which is why she was complying. Nothing organized criminal about that. That was just a couple exploiting another human being for their own personal profit and gain. So human trafficking comes in all shapes and sizes. We prosecuted gangs in the Midlands. I think our first gang case involving human trafficking was here in Richland County, and it involved trafficking of humans in Richland, Lexington, Orangeburg, and I want to say Aiken, and it involved local law enforcement here working in our human trafficking task force. So again, it comes in all shapes and sizes. It doesn't always involve the Hollywood-esque type drama that you would see to it. And it's not always sex trafficking, it's also labor trafficking. A lot of people here, especially undocumented workers, they get sucked into the lifestyle as well. I spoke to a woman this past summer when I was speaking at a function. She said her daughter had came this close to being solicited online. We actually looked at this case for the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, which is a companion task force to the Human Trafficking Task Force. But this woman had actually, the daughter had boarded a bus and got on a bus to Texas to meet her trafficker because she was afraid if she didn't that he would kill her family. He wasn't even in the state, and the bus was intercepted about an hour and a half from where the trafficker was going to meet the girl. And when the officers boarded the bus, and they only were able to find her because it was pinging along cell towers. But when they boarded the bus, she wrapped her arms around the cops and thanked them. So again, this is a serious crime. When we started the task force, we had about 12 member agencies, federal, state, local agencies, as well as some nonprofit groups that were supporting us. This is in 2012. We now have over 300 member, either not just agencies, but nonprofit groups, faith groups, civic groups who have joined in the war on human trafficking. And that is because that people are starting to become more engaged and realize that this is a crime that happens here in Columbia, South Carolina. It happens in Dillon, it happens in Walhalla, it happens in Aiken, it happens everywhere. And you don't have to be, poor. It doesn't matter what ethnicity you are. It doesn't matter what gender you are. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic status is. It's all over the map as far as the trafficking goes. People say, Alan, why do you talk about trafficking everywhere you go? You just seem to be beating this drum. And I became, like I said, when I met Teresa Flores 6 years ago, her story really just motivated me. But not long ago, a couple of years ago, I read a quote that really resonated with me, and it was by the great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, who said probably more than 150 years ago. He said, I expose slavery in this country because to expose it is to kill it. Slavery is one of those monsters of darkness to whom the light of truth is death. And by talking about it here today in this club, I'm raising your awareness, making you more sensitive to the fact that it's existing, whereas most people probably wouldn't be as sensitive to it. But it really does reveal itself in many ways. I want to talk about, and not just our efforts to combat human trafficking, both locally and nationally and internationally, but there's another movement on foot, and that is the growth of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. People ask me about that. They say, tell me about this task force, what does it do? And this isn't exactly on point, but if you've ever heard of that show that used to be out a couple of years ago called To Catch a Predator, and it's when some guy thinks he's talking to a 12-year-old girl, and he shows up at the house, thinking her parents are going to be there, and he strips down to his tidy whities and has his bottle of Zima ready, and then Chris Hansen walks out with MSNBC with the film crew, and then he gets tackled in the front lawn and tased. Great entertainment. That may or may not happen. I'm sure that it does in some instances, but those people are out there. And in 2011, when we really started focusing on enforcement actions, our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force went from 44 law enforcement agencies to 107 as of last month. 107 law enforcement agencies working with our task force, which is partially federally funded, but also state funded. And it's out there patrolling the internet to protect our kids from predators, pedophiles, those who wanted to prey on them. When I grew up, you hear about the snatch and grab. Y'all remember Larry Gene Bell, the grab in the van and go. Well, these guys are now using the internet from the safety of their own basement or their own home. They can prey on our kids, groom our kids. One guy actually met a child online. He was in San Diego. This child was in Lexington, South Carolina. after several months of grooming this child, he traveled to Lexington. This is in the news a couple of years ago. Met the child, lived in the house for like 2 or 3 days, sleeping in the closet at night while the parents were in the house. Mom walks in on the third morning, sees the guy in bed with the child. So this guy jumps out the window. He's later apprehended by law enforcement. He's subsequently prosecuted. But a lot of these people are out there preying on our kids. 6 weeks ago, there was a major upstate bus involving upstate law enforcement agencies that are participating in the task force. There were 45 people arrested. 2 of them were known traffickers. One of them was an upstate youth pastor at a large church in the upstate. One of them, and I can't go into the specifics, but was disclosed in the paper as they got communications from him where he said he was going to travel from the beach because he was looking for a child to turn into his baby maker or his sex slave. He also wanted a kid that he could eat. Yeah, real nice guy. And this is the kind of people that we're intercepting. So the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force and the Human Trafficking Task Force kind of are first cousins in their efforts to protect our kids, to protect ourselves. They work together. A lot of them overlap with the same members. I mean, just since 2011, we've prosecuted over 700 predators, online predators, who are preying on our kids. Another thing that the task force does is our efforts to not just protect kids from predators and pedophiles, but to also protect our kids from who else? Who else do you think we're going to protect our kids from? Anyone? So, someone whisper something. Say each other. Someone say each other. Yeah, yourselves. Yeah, you're right. The answer's right there. Think about it. We're protecting the kids from themselves. Imagine your 15-year-old self. Rusty the Past, I can't imagine what you were like at 15, but I imagine you had a lizard brain. I know I had a lizard brain at 15.
I know what you were like.
Yes, it does. Mutually assured destruction, so we'll stop right now. Let me get back on my speech. He helped raise me, so if you don't like me, it's his fault. Kids are out there, and they're doing lots of things. They have these adult bodies, these adult desires, but their brains haven't finished developing yet. They're really governed by an id. And a lot of kids are out there doing things. I was speaking at and I'll illustrate with a story, and I think I've told this story at this club before, but I'll tell it again in case you missed it. I was at a high school a couple of years ago here in the Midlands, and I walked into a school with 200 sophomores, or about this size. I said, how many of you are under the age of 18? Everybody raised their hand. I said, how many of you have one of these smartphones or a tablet computer? 98, 99% raised their hands. I said, how many of you know that if you were to take a sexually provocative photo or video of yourself or your boyfriend or girlfriend, even if it's consensual, you just manufactured child porn, which carries a minimum of 3 years in prison? Their eyes got really big and things got really quiet. Then I took it up a notch. I said, how many of you knew that if you were to take that same photo or that video of yourself, your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever, consensual or not, irrelevant, and you were to text or email it, print it out and hand it to somebody, what have you just done? You've distributed child porn, which carries a minimum of 2 years in prison. And all of a sudden there was some, you could hear the squirming in the chairs and the little kind of snickers and and then I took it to the final spot. I said, how many of you knew that if you currently are having that photo or video of yourself, your boyfriend, or your girlfriend on your phone or your tablet device, you're in possession of child porn, which carries a minimum of 0 to 10 years in prison. And there was a bunch of oohs and ahs, and the teachers were having to calm everyone down. About a dozen heads went down to delete, and hit the delete button. And I say that kind of as a joke, but it's also to kind of illustrate a serious point that kids are out there not fully comprehending the dangers, not just with sexting, but with cyberbullying and a lot of the other things. We would never let a 12, 13, 14-year-old get on a plane and go around the world by themselves, unaccompanied or unchaperoned, but as parents, we're more apt to let them go around the World Wide Web, which in some ways can be just as dangerous without any supervision. I gave this similar remarks to a school down in Charleston a couple of years ago, and a father came up to me after I told half a dozen stories about how your children can be raped and murdered online, and he came up to me and he said, General Wilson, I'm so glad that you told me about this. My daughter's 13 and I am ripping her off the internet right now. She's not going to touch it again until she's in college. I said, sir, that is the absolute worst thing you can do. And he said, well, you just finished giving this hour-long presentation about how bad this is and how these traffickers are out there and these predators are out there. And I said, how'd you teach your daughter to walk across the street? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, she was a baby, you carried her. After a while she could walk, you probably held her hand and walked with her. after a while, you probably let go of her hand and watched her as you walked with her. Pretty soon you could stand back and watch her do it without you being with her. After a while, you didn't even have to be there. Your daughter learned how to walk across the street because you parented her through that process of learning. Well, don't withhold your daughter from the information highway of the internet, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself. Highways aren't bad. But if you don't respect a highway, walking across a busy one can get you killed if you don't understand how to negotiate it. Same thing with the internet. You can't always be with her, so be with her now and teach her to be a good civic citizen of the internet. And that's what our task force does. We've done probably 2,500 presentations, reaching over 300,000 students in South Carolina over the last 7 years, and teaching them how to protect themselves and be armed. And we also do this for parents and adults as well. And so these are some of the resources that our office does. I'm going to close. This will take 2 minutes, and I'll take questions. A story that I always like to tell people: why I do what I do, and why I derive such passion from it. And it involves a story. When I was formerly a prosecutor in the Attorney General's office several years, 10 years ago, I got a lot of child sex crime cases. And there was one particular case that resonates with me because it really changed the way I see my role as a prosecutor. Forget the Attorney General, just as a public servant. It involved a young woman who, between the ages of 12 and 15, had been sexually molested by a man who was a retired police officer as well as the girl's grandfather. During that 4 years of abuse, he would say things to her like, "No one will believe you because I'm a cop and you're a kid. No one, if you tell anybody, they'll come and take you away, it'll ruin the family, they'll put you in foster care." And he even said to her one time, "All I need is one juror to believe me, reasonable doubt and I walk." And so she kept her mouth shut, but eventually, when she got a little bit older, she found the courage to come forward and say something. It took several years, but by the time she was 19, that case landed on my desk. And me and another prosecutor and a small group of folks, when we tried it, it was a long trial, a graphic trial, but at the end of it, he was convicted and sentenced to 18 years in prison. And as they were taking him out of the courthouse in shackles to go serve his term, she began to cry. And as we were walking, I leaned over to her and I said, "Why are you crying? I thought this is what you wanted." And she said, "Al, you don't understand. I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm happy. You see, for the first time in my life, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor." And that was a powerful moment for me. And I don't think it was as powerful at that moment, but it became more powerful as I reflected upon it, because we couldn't undo what happened to her. What had happened was part of who she was, but what we were able to do is we were able to play a role in changing how she sees herself in society. And we got to empower this young woman, to give a voice to the voiceless. And that's what prosecutors and law enforcement do. That's what we all do. That's why we're part of this club, to empower people and help them. And so that is what kind of drives me in the efforts against human trafficking and protecting our children. So I want to thank you. You've been a very attentive group, and I think we got about 6-7 minutes left till the end of the hour, and I'm happy to entertain questions if you have them.
What are some of the subjects that you would address besides that one that the Attorney General's office is addressing?
He's asked me what other topics that I could address. Issue du jour, obviously, I think a lot of people here are talking about the SCANA Dominion merger and the debate that's raging on in the General Assembly right now. There's two bodies disagreeing on how much rate should be lowered. Is it 13? Is it 18? What is the BLRA? Why was it, where are we on that? Our office was asked for an opinion last summer by 2 Republicans, 2 Democrat legislators. So we went in and we did a brief investigation to apply the facts to the law as we received it, and the office determined that the Base Load Review Act was unconstitutional as it had been applied, not on its face, meaning the law might have been a bad law, but it wasn't an unconstitutional one until we learned what we learned. And what we found out was that the ratepayers' due process rights were violated, at least that was our opinion, and how they were notified about the rate increase hearings, as well as it was an unlawful taking under the takings clause of the Constitution. And so we opined that. We were subsequently part of a lawsuit by a class of individuals, ratepayers, and we are taking the side of the ratepayers that we believe that the entire 18% has been unconstitutionally, as applied, raised, and therefore all 18% is unconstitutional. How that affects the merger of Dominion and SCANA is not an issue that I've really focused on, because that's not my role. My role is to interpret the law, and that's what my staff and I have done. The opioid epidemic, major issue. Do you have a question?
Could you explain the history and the grand jury, the power it has, and it goes back to English common law? I served on the grand jury for 2 years. And
Was it a county grand jury or state grand jury that you served on?
Yeah, I'll tell you about this interesting story. I used to take that to you, but if you were arrested, you were guilty, and now you're innocent of proven guilt.
Well, a little over 800 years ago, King John signed the Magna Carta. Is that where you want me to start 800 years ago? And one of the things that, all right, fast forward. Right, okay, got it. All right, here we are in the 20th century, 21st century. But it comes from that, comes from English common law, from the ebb time of the Magna Carta, which the lords and the landowners that the king ruled under, they wanted certain assurances. They would pledge their fealty and fidelity to the king, but in exchange they had certain rights. So the king just couldn't say, I want your land, or I want your wife or your daughter or whatever, so I'm going to go ahead and accuse you of having, carnal, unlawful relations with farm animals, and we're going to throw you in prison just because I'm the king. The king had to have jurisdiction to be able to haul you before a magistrate and have you thrown into prison for whatever he was accusing you of. And that would have to be from a grand jury, which would give the king the authority to do that. The king, now the state, or the U.S., depending, it's the government, can't haul you in to, does not have jurisdiction to hear a criminal case against you until such time as you have either waived that right of grand jury, or a grand jury has stamped an indictment against you saying that we believe there's probable cause that you've committed a crime. Does not mean you are guilty of a crime, it just means the state or the government has the ability to have a trial against you. And that is where the grand jury comes from. Most county grand juries don't have investigative authority. The state grand jury does, just like federal grand juries do. At the federal level, there's only one grand jury, and that is the grand jury. In the state, we have a state grand jury, and we have county grand juries. So I don't know if that explains it.
See, county grand jury does not have the right to look into something else if they see the tentacles connected to something else.
The county grand jury is very limited in what it can do. It doesn't have investigative powers the way the state grand jury does. Now, the prosecution agency at the county level, whatever they present, whatever the law enforcement officer presents, the grand jury can rule on that. They don't have the ability to follow it wherever it goes. That's at the state grand jury level. And I've been told a final question, and I'm going to let you pick because I don't want to offend.
Louisa, I just have a quick question. If you sort of touched on it, but are you doing anything for laws against cyberbullying?
I know that there was a law recently not passed, but that was attempted to be passed, but I don't think it's been signed in yet. There are harassment laws on the books, but that requires a string of incidences in order for it to be a harassment, and so I don't know that that's sufficient.
What's the question?
I'm sorry, let me repeat the question. She was asking, are we doing anything to combat cyberbullying? And I know that there have been some debates and some laws in the General Assembly. I'm not quite sure where they are. I know that for the time being, our view is an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. We can prosecute and go after folks with the long letter of the law, but I would like to try to educate kids. We're using the ICAC task force to talk about cyberbullying. We've had kids commit suicide. I don't think in South Carolina to my knowledge, but we have had kids take their lives because of the type of harassment they receive online. And like back in the old days, you could run home and hide off in your mom's living room, but now these kids have these things everywhere. So just trying to educate the students, those 300,000 people we reached, we've talked about cyberbullying to them. There does need to be stronger legislation, I believe, that addresses that from a harassment standpoint. I see we're at the witching hour. I've got 1 minute. I'm just going to say this. I know there were a couple of other hands out there. I'm happy to take your questions offline. But thank you so much for the kindness and warmth you showed me, my family, my baby brother who's now a man. He's in Oklahoma today at work, and he told me to tell you hello. But thank you for allowing me to come here today to talk to you. If you want us to come to your school or another civic group or a faith group that you're part of, it doesn't have to be me. It can be anyone in my office. We'll come and give a deeper dive on what to look for when it comes to victims of human trafficking. I know some members here have actually dealt with it in real time, and so we'd be happy to discuss it with you further in another venue. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you for everything that you're doing for our state. We appreciate you being here with us today. So Rusty doesn't get upset with me. If you'll please, if you have not given us a headshot to put on the district database, I've been working on that this week, trying to upload those. Rusty took some photos last week, so if you have a professional headshot, you can send it to me. I've got the list, and I'll send out an email to kind of jog your memories. So we'll be doing that in the next week or so. But let's go ahead. Oh, we're not meeting next week. It's Memorial Day, so take Jeff's advice and keep everyone in your thoughts, and also have a good weekend. And we're going to go ahead and end in song.